Good evening, everybody. At this time, please silence your cell phones and be advised these proceedings are being recorded. For those physically present in the council chamber to desire to address the city council during the meeting, please complete the request to speak form available in the front entrance of the council chamber and present it to the city clerk. Speakers physically present or participating via Zoom will be called upon at an appropriate time, and each person will be allowed 3 minutes of speaking time. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024 at 6 p.m. And tonight we're going to close and honor Joe Ramos. Ramos, is it Ramos? Ramos, and Councilman Allen, you have some words to say for him? Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to close the meeting tonight and hold this meeting in memoriam of Joe Ramos, a longtime resident of Grand Terrace. Joe was a longtime volunteer after he retired from his professional life. He was a volunteer in many capacities. He was in Orange County Parks, a volunteer as an Orange County Park Ranger. He was also a longtime volunteer with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department's Search and Rescue Command Center. And he was a charter member of our CERT team here. He and Joe Ramos was one of the first people. He took the very first class, and he was one of the first 4 members of the Grand Terrace CERT. And I really respected him a lot. We learned a lot from him. He was a very active member in our community, and we're going to miss him a lot. So thanks for keeping him and his family in your thoughts.
Thank you. So invocation will be given by the Mayor Pro Tem, Doug Wilson, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Jeff Allen. Please stand. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilman Allen. Any AB disclosures? None. Madam City Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Henderson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Rodriguez-Robles. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
I am here.
Mayor Hussey.
Present.
Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. Item A, reordering additionals or removal of any items from the agenda. Do we have any?
Yes, we'd like to remove 4, 6, and 7 from consent and open for discussion. And also Chief Cerna has a introduction he'd like to make, if we can do that now.
Okay. 4, 6, and 7 for discussion items?
Correct.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's with great honor I am privileged that I announce that your new Assistant Chief, Gary Yeager, will assume my role. Believe it or not, I've been called down to HQ. I've had the privilege to accept the role as Deputy Chief of Operations, so it's a promotion for me. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gary, but I will say it's been a pleasure serving this council and this community, and we look forward to continuing our partnership and relationship with the City of Grand Terrace. Chief Yeager.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I follow in the footsteps of Chief Cerna, and I look forward to serving you as well as the citizens of Grand Terrace. I've been in the department for 24 years, and I look forward to building my relationship with you as well as this great community. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief Cerna, for everything you've done for this city. We really appreciate it. Anybody else on the council have anything to say? Go, Councilman Allen.
Just thanks. Thanks for all you've done. You've been a very integral part of our community.
Okay, well, thank you again. And okay, we'll move to item B, public comment. This is opportunity for members of the public to comment on any item not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the city council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made and ask questions for clarification. The mayor may also request a brief response from the staff to questions raised during the public comment, or may request the matter be agendized for future meetings. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do, Mayor. Sarah Wilson.
Ms. Wilson?
Hi, it's my first time, so what do I get? 3 minutes? Did it start already? Wonderful. Good evening. My name's Sarah Wilson. I'm a Grand Terrace resident. I am here tonight to discuss Palestine. I'm talking about it because it's very devastating what's going on. I'm sure we're all aware that 100,000 people have either been killed, maimed, or missing in Palestine. This subject is very close to me because I have family in Palestine. Our 11-year-old cousin was hit by an Israeli airstrike and was killed. He was 11 years old. We've lost 2 friends as well. My mother-in-law and father-in-law are in Lebanon, and so the war is escalating. And what I'm asking for is, obviously, fire does not fight fire, right? And aggression does not fight aggression. So the only thing that's going to work is love and peace. So what I'm appealing to the council tonight to call for a permanent ceasefire. I have friends who are Jewish people who are in this fight for a permanent ceasefire. They are against what's happening in Palestine. It doesn't give anybody security, not Palestine, not Israel, and not the United States. It obviously does not create friends, what's happening over in Palestine. So all I want is, as a community, for us to see that war obviously will not lead us to peace, and it's not love, you know? So I'm just asking for a permanent ceasefire. This has affected my family, and I know I'm not the only one that it has affected. So I just ask for a permanent ceasefire from the city of Grand Terrace. I love living here. I love this community. I love the people. And I feel like the only way we can get through it is to love each other and to be kind. And we have to start with stopping the killing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. We're praying for you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
MC Clerk, anybody else?
Johan Gallo.
None? So next item is special presentation, introduction to San Bernardino County Fire Chief.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said we had none.
No, I said Johan,
Oh,
and we have several.
well, it's just Johan, so. Okay, sorry about that. All
You
right,
know, I'm
John.
like that bent penny that you need in the vending machine and just keeps showing
I
up
should
when
have
you
turned
need
my
it really
hearing aids
bad.
on.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. Johan Gallo, 22808 DeSoto Street, longtime resident. You know, we worked on this committee for more law enforcement, and in January's council meeting, there was a lot of discussion. Now, we've been at this for 7 years, and so I want to go with a quote from the play 1776 that talks about John Quincy Adams addressing Congress. We piddle, twiddle, and resolve, not one damn thing do we solve. So we've been at this for 7 years. We've been talking a lot. Lieutenant Wolf did his job, did a presentation to the city. We had a large turnout. Lieutenant Lane has continued to carry the standard to keep pushing this thing forward. We worked with Assemblymember Reyes to get more funds and grants. That went nowhere. Bobby Forbes, myself, Kelly Brule, a lot of citizens sat for 6 months to get a petition signed, only to fall 150 signatures short. Last year, you approved the formation of the ad hoc committee to discuss law enforcement services for our city. Here we are. January 9th council meeting, I wasn't here. As my daughter said, it isn't a question of if you're going to get COVID, it's a question of when. She works at Loma Linda Hospital, might know something about it. So here we are. January 9th, you could have moved this thing forward and it went nowhere. I want to thank Jessica and all those, Mike and all the others that work, Danny Fox, a lot of residents that have been in this city for years that work diligently on this program. And the task that you put before us to come up with a feasible recommendation to the council. And so here we are. So I'm disappointed in the results of January 9th's meeting, and I hope that we're not going to try and do a citizens initiative, because I spent almost 9 months to see it go nowhere and fall 150 signatures short. So with that, I'm pleading with the council, can we finally move this thing forward and get something done? Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments not on the agenda?
That was a public comment. That's how it was marked on the card.
Okay. Do we have any more?
Next is Colin Markovich.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I am Colin Markovich, Field Representative for Assemblymember Sabrina Cervantes, representing the 58th Assembly District. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. As the new legislative session has started, I did just want to take a few moments to update the City Council and provide a legislative update as what's going on in Sacramento. Right now, Assemblymember Cervantes is we will be moving our legislative package through the year, and we have had the pleasure of, in previous years, of having 42 pieces of legislation signed into law. And so we are moving on to the 2024 year. The deadline to introduce legislation is the end of this week, and Assemblymember Cervantes has introduced her legislative package, and a top priority of us this year will be AB 1899. Folks may have heard of the practice of what's called claim sharking. There are some services that are provided to our veterans through the VA that are free of charge. However, there are some unscrupulous entities and individuals who will charge our veterans exorbitant fees to help access these services. It's unconscionable that there are organizations who would seek to take advantage of our veterans in this way, but the fact is that they do exist, and so AB 1899 would help crack down on these unscrupulous individuals and ensure that our veterans are receiving access to the services that they deserve. So we are hopeful that this will continue to move forward through the legislature, and we'll be able to provide updates in the future. I also wanted to provide information about an event that our office is hosting in the community on Thursday, Thursday, February 15th, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Our office will be partnering with the California Highway Patrol to host a Age Well, Drive Smart event. This event, in partnership with the CHP, will go over safe driving practices. And while it is targeted toward our seniors or folks who are getting a little bit older in years, the information contained within the seminar will be helpful to pretty much anybody who chooses to attend. It will go over safe driving practices for all and help folks stay on the road a little bit longer to keep their freedom. So this will be at the Eddie D. Smith Senior Center in Hoopa Valley. It'll be Thursday, February 15th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and we are looking forward to seeing folks there. And as always, if folks have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam City Clerk, we have anybody else?
No more public comment.
Okay, I'm going to go and close public comment. And the next item, now is item C, special presentation, introduction to San Bernardino County Fire Chief District Daniel Muskie, presenting information on FP5. Sir, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What a pleasure to be here in front of you. First off, thank you for the deputies. Our partnership with Sheriff Dykes remains incredibly strong in this fire department, and our hats are off for them doing a very tough job in our communities. I also want to congratulate Assistant Chief Gary Yeager for stepping up and agreeing to lead in this division. He's a great leader, and I think you're going to find he's every bit as capable as Chief Cerna. In the back behind me is our union president, Jim Gravoli. I'd like to recognize him. And the guy that looks like a skater is not Tony Hawk, that's Kenny Halsef. I'm here to talk about FP5, which will be Measure W on our March 5th ballot. I'd like to explain what it is and what's the impact. So the proposed Measure W will appear on the ballot in this year's March primary election. It gives the voters the opportunity to repeal the service zone FP5. A repeal of service zone FP5 means a loss of $46.5 million of our operational budget. That's $171.85 on a parcel tax. A yes vote will repeal it. A no vote will mean that the fire district will retain that $46.5 million to continue to provide service. I often get asked who wrote this ballot measure because it's a little confusing. It was not me. It was the attorneys. So let me read it. Shall the measure to repeal the special tax for San Bernardino County Fire Protection District Service Zone FP5 be adopted? A yes vote would repeal it. $46.5 million will no longer be available in our budget. A no vote would mean that the fire district retains those dollars. A little bit about our fire district. We cover 19,278 square miles. You can take the 4 smallest states in the union and put it within our borders. People don't understand is that almost 80% of that is state or federal land. Does the audience know how much property tax the state or the feds pay us? You are right, Mr. Johan, 0. We are also a California special district and not a department of San Bernardino County. I'd like to make this distinction because often people will say that if the fire district loses this special tax, then the county general fund will backfill $46.5 million. I am a special district, just like a water district, a school district, a park district, a sanitation district. And the Board of Supervisors have made it very clear, Chief Muncie, we love our firefighters, but you're not a county department. And just like we don't give school districts money or park and recreation districts, we cannot give a fire department district money. As a matter of fact, we're not the only fire district in San Bernardino. Chino Valley is an example, Rancho Cucamonga, and up there on the hill, Big Bear. Because we're a special district, we are bound by Fire Protection District Law, which can be found in California Health and Safety Code 13800. This is placed here too for distinction because there are members of citizens out there that say that our fire tax should have been a 2/3 vote of the citizens. And while I don't disagree, we would like to vote 2/3 on our taxes. The reality is we also have general taxes, which is 50 plus 1. And in the case of a special district, well, a special district can't put a tax measure on the ballot. There's only 3 entities that can do that: a city, a county, which we're not, or citizens. So in this case, the fire district, as we expanded our fire tax over the years, we had to follow what they call a LAFCO protest vote. A LAFCO protest vote doesn't sound right, but we're bound by law. And what that means is that we needed to demonstrate that we needed the funding, which Chief Hartwig did in 2018. Then we had to notice every property owner and every voter in the district that we were going to expand our assessment district. Here's where it doesn't feel right. Every single one of the notices that went out, a landowner or a voter had to take a piece of paper out and they had to write, "I protest this," or "No," and mail it back in. And at the end of the day, how many people do you think are you going to get to take a piece of paper out of the drawer, write "No," and send it back in? You just won't. And in the case of the fire district, 4% of the people did, so it was considered to have passed at 96%. This is no different than what a water district would do. In fact, I live in Yucca Valley, and we had the state come in and put a moratorium on our septic tanks, meaning that they had to be capped. And the state said, we'll charge you $5,000 a day if you continue to put wastewater on the ground through a septic tank. I was asked to be on a citizens advisory group pretty soon as elected to the water board, and we had to solve a $100 million problem with 25,000 people. A water district, being a special district, followed this exact same process as the fire district with the protest vote, because that's how special districts are able to expand assessments. In 2023, we received 196,000 calls for service. We are truly all hazard. As you're aware, San Bernardino County is the #1 disaster-related county in the United States. We are busy. Our men and women are in the top 10% in the nation at 196,000 calls. And in fact, some of our cities, our fire engines are overtaxed by almost double. The city of San Bernardino, for instance, we have fire engines that run almost 7,000 calls. Too busy is around 3,000 calls. The men and women that work for the fire district are incredible. They are the best firefighters in the world. They are the best at solving these various emergencies that you see in front of you. So what is FP5? This is an annual assessment that was originally voted on by the residents of Hellendale. Does anybody know where Hellendale is, Silver Lakes? in between Victorville and Barstow, CSD. They had a paid call station, a volunteer station, and they wanted full-time firefighters, paramedic. Now, the fire district didn't put this on the ballot, the citizens did, and at the time, they put a parcel tax of $137 to pay for that fire protection. In 2018, that tax was growing, and it's been expanded over our entire jurisdiction. There's 4 cities that pay for the majority or most of their fire protection. San Bernardino City in 2016 was going bankrupt. Those of you who live next to San Bernardino, it's not a surprise to you, but in 2016, San Bernardino City reduced their general fund obligation from the city and annexed into the fire tax to the tune of about $10 million to pay for services in San Bernardino City. And then there was a lowered obligation for their general fund. Upland did the same thing to the tune of $3.3 million. 29 Palms, 100% of their services paid by this fire tax. In the city of Needles, more than half is paid by this fire tax. In fact, FP5 now accounts for 19% of our operational budget. There is no known replacement for this fire tax. We will not get money from the general fund. As your fire chief, I promise I will provide the best fire protection to you. At the end of the day, a fire protection at one engine costs $2.3 million a year to provide service, 2.3. And that seems like a lot of money, but I always like asking, how much is a new fire engine? Anybody want to take a guess? When I first started these presentations, as a battalion chief, I like to ask in 2009, and the answer was $350,000 in 2009. But as you know, inflation has not stayed stagnant. It has risen sharply, and today a new fire engine costs $1.3 million. We don't buy new fire engines out of our operating budget every year. Just like you, I put money aside into our reserves, and we build up a reserve so we can replace fire engines and fire stations. And when you add the liability and insurances, that's where you get your $2.3 million. The city of Grand Terrace, the property tax that's allocated to the fire district is $1.5 million. Station costs $2.3. That's an $800,000 difference. The FP5 tax here in the city of Grand Terrace is $622,000. So the city of Grand Terrace is paying less for this fire engine with the property tax and the current FP5 tax than it would cost if you were to have your own special tax measure to cover the cost of a fire station. And the reason is that county fire operates on a regional basis. There are other areas that contribute to this fire engine, and this fire engine does leave the city at times to help its neighbors. Neighbors helping neighbors is how the fire service exists. FP5 directly pays for fire stations. Just like a city, we have enterprise accounts. Our fire marshal's office charges a fee. The fee pays for the fire marshal's office. Our ambulances charge a fee. Those fees pay for the ambulances. I can't take fees to the fire marshal's office and pay for fire protection. I can't take ambulance fees and pay for fire protection. Your property tax and FP5 is what directly pays for the fire stations. There's a call for services within this city, 1,447. And the responses by Medic Engine 23 was 1,608. What does that mean? About 150 calls outside the city. But the city is, the majority of the time, is available here in the city for the residents. A little bit about FP5. The money that's raised here in the city must be spent in this region. I can't take money from Grand Terrace and spend it in Lake Arrowhead. And I can't take Lake Arrowhead money and spend it in Hesperia, or Hesperia money and spend it in Yucca Valley. It must be spent within this zone. This community has one fire station, that's Medic Engine 23. And our parcel tax FP5 supports 3 per-person staffing. Now, when I first started, there was a lot of engines that didn't have 3-person. Today, it is a standard. Cal OSHA and OSHA has made it very difficult to not have adequate firefighters on your fire engine. As a matter of fact, they require 4 firefighters in order to enter a structure fire. You have 3 on your fire engine. Where you're getting the 4th generally is from the battalion chief who's arriving, or the next in fire engine that's coming from the city of San Bernardino or perhaps Colton or Loma Linda. We do have paramedic staffing on all our fire engines. This is incredibly important. Unfortunately, the private ambulance industry across America is crumbling. Response times, when I first started, they would generally be about 10 minutes here in the valley. Now they're often exceeding 30 minutes, 45 minutes. There are times where firefighters are putting patients in the back of the fire engine and transporting to the hospital. This is a nationwide problem in the ambulance system. It's critical that you have paramedics on your fire engines to begin treatment. The second thing for your awareness is that ambulances have one EMT, which is basic life support, and one paramedic, which is advanced life support. We train as teams. When you're having a critical medical emergency, when you die, you need multiple paramedics. When you're traumatic in your injuries, you need multiple paramedics. Your firefighter paramedic on your fire engine will get in the back of that ambulance and help transport to the hospital. FP5 assists with hand crews and heavy equipment that we use. Whether it's flooding or wildfire or other disasters, this equipment is always available to the city of Grand Terrace. It pays for that fleet upgrade and replacement. It pays for station maintenance and improvements. As I mentioned, there is no current known revenue available to backfill FP5. A loss of FP5 would mean the city has $1.5 million to operate a $2.3 million fire station. Fire Station 23 is significantly funded by FP5. There would be possible reduction in staffing. Could be possible station closures, expected increase in response times. There could be an increase in insurance premiums. So what if FP5 is not repealed? It will maintain funding for Fire Station 23. It'll maintain the current staffing and resource levels. I'd be happy to answer any of the council's questions.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Allen?
Thanks for that report, Chief Muncie. It was good and understandable. I remember when in 2018, when this came up for the ballot, and I addressed the county supervisors at one of the meetings in opposition to it. And I remember at that meeting, there was a huge line of people stretched all out the door of the Justice Center, all down the street. And they were all signing those really quick letters. I oppose this. And everyone did. Okay, so anyway, the point is that I say this because, and to ask you this, I talked to very few people who were opposed to the monetary amount. I wasn't. I mean, it started out at $157 a month, I think, back in 2018, and it's 3% annual increase is what was voted for. So what they are opposed to is the unfairness of it, and hopefully you can pass this on back to them because, you have an apartment complex that's built that's got, maybe 1,200 residents in it, 1,200 dwelling units in it, and it's built on 3 parcels. And they're paying per parcel what I pay per parcel, and I've got 4 people living on my parcel. You see the point? And so there was some real questioning about who did the calculations here. If you have a city like most cities, like our city and Loma Linda, a lot of cities have a lot of apartment complexes. A lot of people living on a small amount of land, and it seems like it'd been a little bit more fair if that had been considered in the amount of the FP5 was requesting. And the second one was because there were residents in the rural areas, specifically the deserts areas, the high desert and low desert, who have multiple combined parcels, and they were not wanting to give them up, but you were offering them this deal. Well, we'll make it one big parcel and it won't be 10 parcels anymore. But wait a minute, what about my water rights, Oh, well, we're going to take those. Oh, see, so there's a lot of unfairness in this. And I'm hoping that gets worked out this time because it still seems unfair.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. I received that question quite a bit, and it goes back to the history of how FP5 came about. I think you might have raised your hand. You've been out to Hellendale, and in Hellendale, there's really no commercial. There's no industrial. And there's a couple of grocery stores and maybe a couple of gas stations. And then there's single-family residents, but there's a whole lot of vacant land. So I'm often asked, why does an industrial pay a lot more and then commercial pay a lot more than multifamily or single-family residents? And the answer is Hellendale. When they started this tax, if they would have put it a lot more in industrial, there is none. And if they put a lot on commercial, well, then there's only 2 or 3 commercial buildings that would have bore the cost of this, and they would have closed. And if they would have put it only on the homeowners and not the vacant land, then how much they charge per resident would have skyrocketed. So that model in the desert is what was expanded because it was the only model available to the district. Today, does it work in the valley? Well, there's a lot of commercial here in the valley that could be taxed more, and there's a lot of industrial. At this point, though, that assessment can't be adjusted. That's not within our purview to do. Unfortunately, it just is what it is. It doesn't make much sense in the valley, but it makes a lot of sense in the desert where there's a lot of absentee landowners of vacant land who are speculative, and they're looking at growth in the region, and they're there to capitalize. It makes a little bit of sense in San Bernardino where the same thing's occurring, where you have land speculation, but you don't, or perhaps absentee owners, but your residents aren't paying this tax. But it's really hard, I think, to come up with an assessment that would make sense all the way across the board. And as unfair as it is for a single-family residence, when they look next to them, there's a vacant lot, and that vacant lot's paying the same as a single-family residence, and they look across the street and there's a multifamily. Unfortunately, that's just the way the assessment was set up in 2008.
And it can't be changed, I suppose.
No, sir. And so I'll go back. A yes vote means the fire district will lose $46.5 million. Again, as your fire chief, I will operate within the budget that you give me. Unfortunately, that will likely mean the closure of fire stations. I don't have any other way of bringing money into the fire district other than this assessment. If that were to happen and the community decided to raise a local tax, then the community will actually pay more. In the case of Grand Terrace, you pay $622,000 now. You would end up needing to pay $800,000 for that same fire station because of that regional scale. This could affect other communities that decide they're not going to pay the fire tax and instead their station closes. And now we have a reduction in mutual and auto aid. It's incredibly complicated, Councilmember Allen, but I'm going to do my job with the money that you give me. As I mentioned, this is not a reflection on our firefighters. These are the hardest working men and women in the United States. They are truly dedicated to their craft. And they too are very worried about this and their future.
You know, I went to that training center you have over by the airport back whenever in 2018, and no pun not intended, I was blown away by the whole facility and the whole operation, the whole professionalism. I mean, it was like, I thought, I was really, really, truly impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was Fire Ops 101. Our training facility is a budget training center. I mentioned the fire engines are $1.3 million now, and I'm going to tell you, those aren't Cadillac fire engines. Those are the Ford, those are the Chevy, those are the Dodge fire engines. You go to some of these jurisdictions around us, they're much better funded, and they're spending a lot more. The reason why, $1.3 million, you go talk to most fire chiefs, they're like, how are you doing it so cheap? The answer is economy of scale. So we are proud to be your fire department. We have been for almost my whole entire career. I have family that lives in Grand Terrace. I've been here in front of you many times. I'm happy to give you great leadership in Gary Yeager, and we're proud to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councilman Robles or Councilman Henderson? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The vote that you anticipate, is it 50+1 or 66 2/3?
Thank you for asking that question, sir. Measure W, a 50+1 vote, yes, would mean that FP5 is repealed. We lose that $46.5 million. A no vote, a 50+1, and what I mean is one vote past 50%, would mean that the fire district retains the $46.5 million for operations, including the $622,000 that's raised here in Grand Terrace.
Now, the 50+1, is that district-wide or community-wide? So if Grand Terrace, for instance, voted against FP5, but other regions in the district offset Grand Terrace's negative vote, how does that process work?
It's a 50+1 jurisdiction-wide.
Jurisdiction-wide.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You were here before, and I had questioned you regarding in my master's training. We were told that fire could be cut down because a lot of your calls are convalescent hospitals, slips and falls in private homes, that kind of thing, and has really nothing to do with a fire of a home. The other thing was staffing on the engines, that it could be cut by one. That I think that you have 4 now. What's your response to those kinds of issues that have been brought up by folks?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. The percentage of fires across the nation is about 4% of the total calls. There's a significant amount of rescues. For instance, auto extrication in vehicles. I don't know if you saw in Fontana the other day, we had a lady fall 25 feet into a cesspool she didn't even know was there. When you take that 4% of fires, though, understand that some of these fires, when Blue Mountains burn in, is going to be a long duration. When you have the Grand Prix fire, long duration. So that percentage of calls doesn't reflect on the amount of time. Our firefighters also train every single day, and the vast majority of their training is fire and rescue. And to your emergency and medical question, I would say that if we had a robust ambulance that could reduce the need, but at the end of the day in San Bernardino County, we've never had a robust ambulance system. We have 1 paramedic on the ambulance, and it's often critical that you have 2 or more paramedics on some of the more emergent calls. Yes, it would be nice if our firefighters didn't have to go to the convalescent home. We have one here in Grand Terrace that they're often at. But the fact is that those individuals have urgent emergencies as well. Difficulty breathing, seizures, falls, heart attacks. And it's critical that we get the first arriving paramedic there within a certain window in order to make sure that we're saving their lives. The longer you go without ALS care, the less likelihood and survivability. Those would be my arguments for those 2 viewpoints on the fire service.
You know, I guess I'm surprised that a medical center, such a convalescent home, wouldn't have first response capability.
You would think, I will say this, is that LVN is generally what we're talking about, licensed vocational nurse. The ones that are working in urgent cares or emergency rooms, they're going to be used to emergencies. But those that are working in convalescent aren't often as adept at the emergencies. They're good, and they're trained, and they start a lot of the care, but what they can't do is transport that patient to the hospital where they have the sophisticated emergencies, a higher level of nursing, doctors, operating rooms where they can save somebody's life. Another point you made is that sometimes people will say, well, operate with less firefighters on a fire engine. San Bernardino County, we have 3, and I told you this, the law is 4 that we have before we go into structured fire. If you go to LA County, the vast majority of the fire engines are 4. In Orange County, the vast majority of the fire engines will have 4 firefighters. They'll have 5 people on the truck, and if you go to larger cities like New York or Chicago, they'll put 6 or more. So we are operating on what we would consider the bare minimum in California. As a matter of fact, I can't name a fire department in California anymore that doesn't have at least 3 or more firefighters on that fire engine.
And a final follow-up to that. Through ConFire, this ambulance thing that's going to happen has no effect on any of this?
So ConFire has been very innovative. I've stood in front of you and I've talked about our emergency communication nurses system. And I want to make sure you understand we're using innovation to try to reduce our calls. When someone calls 911, it's a lower grade emergency. If they don't need an ambulance, we're sending them to a nurse's hotline that can connect them to services. And that helps for a small percentage of the calls. To the ConFire, the ambulance system, because ConFire has been so innovative, and it's a JPA composed of all the fire departments, we've come together and we've formed a ambulance transportation division. The ambulance transportation division did put in a bid for a countywide ambulance to replace AMR, and it was awarded that. ConFire is in the process of putting the ambulances together. ConFire is not there to make a profit. As a matter of fact, 100% of the profit goes back into adding additional ambulances. But even then, you have 1 paramedic on an ambulance. You're still in a system where there's not a whole lot of money, as I mentioned, across the nation. The ambulance companies are slowly going out of business. They're really struggling. The commitment here is, though, the fire services recognizes a need. And the need is we need to have an ambulance as quick as we can to get our patients to the hospital. And so the fire service is doing this in partnership together to form this ambulance company and ensure that we have the best response times for our citizens. When we discuss FP5, though, FP5 does not pay for these ambulances. This pays for the firefighters in your fire station, on the fire engine. It pays for the fire engine, the tools, and the equipment that are in your Grand Terrace station, not the ambulances.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close questions. Madam City Clerk, with any public comment? Thank you, Chief.
Yes,
Thank you.
James Gregoli.
Mayor, Council, my name's Jim Gregoli. I'm the president of the San Bernardino County Firefighters. Chief Muncy stood up here and gave you all kinds of facts about the county fire department. I'm going to talk to you about this voting measure that we did. In 2018, this did go to a parcel vote, and when it was passed, there was some complaints from a group that has organized to try to repeal the measure. In 2019, they came forward and they put it on the ballot for 50+1 to all of the citizens, just not the property owners, but to all of the citizens. So it affects like your entire family in a house, or it affects everybody in an apartment complex. It was continued on, the FP5 won, and it continued on 56-44. So it won by 12 points. In 2021, we came to a time where they decided they were going to attempt to do it again. This time they illegally gathered signatures by giving false information. So when that vote came around, a judge had already ruled that that would never take place. Nothing during that vote could change it. So we're back here now in 24. The true facts about what's happening here is there is a group called the Red Brennan Group that gathered 5,000 signatures. Keep in mind what I'm talking about, 5,000 signatures for 1.4 million people to repeal this measure, to take away your fire protection, to take away your paramedics, to take away your quick response, to increase your insurance rates. All that was done by them, simply to turn around and repeal a tax that I think if you see the other assessments that go around some of the other departments today, what the county is charging is much less than what the other cities are doing. But so 5,000 people decided that we were going to affect 1.4 million people. That's where we sit today. This is just a very, when it's just put in black and white, this is a defund the fire department. This is as simple as it can get. If you vote yes, you're asking to defund the fire department. If you vote no, you're asking to keep the fire department. Now, there's a lot of things that happen with defunding the fire department. Increased response times, closed stations. The insurance rates will go up, I promise you that. But this is a very simple topic. They have tried this 4 times. I can't understand how we continue to let 5,000 signatures dictate 1.4 million, but that's my fight with the supervisors. So I encourage the council to support a no on W. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Guys, maintain clapping, please. I know we're excited about this, but do we have any other public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay, well, go ahead. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation, and best of luck to the firefighters, and your initiative. Okay, consent calendar. Item D, the following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon the city council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizens may request removal of the item of the consent calendar. So we have item 4, 6, and 7 removed for to go over. Do we have any other removals? Council members, do you want to remove anything for discussion? No, so if that's the case, we need to vote on item 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 9, and 10. Do I have a motion?
I'll move items 1, 3, what is it?
5,
5,
8, 9, and 10.
and 9 of the consent calendar.
And number
Mayor.
10?
And 10. Yeah.
And number 2 as well.
And number 2 also. Any more?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, item 4. Or we just remove it? Because item 4 is revise the special event fees and deposit requirements previously approved by the establishment of the City Council in Title 8 of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, City Manager. Just here to present the resolution to amend the current special event fees. Just a little bit of background. Title 8 of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code kind of defines special events as a commercial event, spectator event, grand openings, parades, and another event noticed here in the city of Grand Terrace is the Cars and Coffee. These events are very crucial to the community. It seems like they're very embedded in the community. And back on October 1st, with the adoption of the new fee schedule, the special events fees went originally from a minor event to $310, to a mid-sized event to $620, and then a major event, which was $620 with the actual cost and deposit, all went up to $1,230 for a minor event with a security deposit, $1,435 with a security deposit for a mid-sized event, and $2,000 was a deposit and actual cost for the special event. Due to public comment as well as direction for the City Council, I brought forth this resolution, which amends the special event fees, bringing them down to zero for a mid-size, minor, and major event. This is to allow feasibility for all members of the public to be able to access special events, businesses, community groups, churches, and nonprofit groups. Based on feedback from the public, they want the special event fee to be more feasible so they could be able to access and serve the community in whatever ways they need. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Does the council have any questions? No? Okay, Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Yes, Becky Giroux.
Good evening, Becky Giroux, 21891 Vivienda Avenue, Grand Terrace, California. And I would just like to thank you for looking at this again. Grand Terrace Lions Club has a wonderful collaboration with this city. We, through our fundraising events, are able to get enough money to continue to support our charities. And so we thank you for looking at it again. I think other people sitting in here tonight are also very excited about that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Madam City Clerk, any other one?
No other public comment.
Okay, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to council's discussion, and request motion. Any discussion? Ken Henderson? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had asked for this item to be removed from the consent calendar for procedural reasons, not substantive, and I'll explain my position. I support the recommendation made by staff. What I did not support was this matter being placed on the consent calendar. Ask yourself this question: if in fact the city was going to raise fees, would it be on the consent calendar? I would venture to say the answer would be no. It should philosophically be the same approach that we should take when we reduce fees, even if it's for a noble purpose that's being discussed already tonight. So, having said that, I would hope that in the future that items of such a nature are placed as action items on the City Council agenda rather than on the consent calendar. I want to thank the gentleman who spoke, because I was going to ask the city manager for a staff report so the audience and the viewing public would know exactly what was being proposed tonight. Placing it on the consent calendar, as the mayor read into the record, on items that are expected to be routine. I would say that the reduction of fees for any purpose in the city associated with our schedule of fees is not routine. Having said that, Mayor, I'm prepared I'm happy to recommend adoption of agenda item number 4.
Copy. Do I have a second?
Second it.
I have a motion by Councilman Henderson, a second by Councilman Alba. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. Item 6, amendment to agreement between the City of Grand Terrace and Michael Baker International Housing Element Consultant Services for 2021 to 2029 planning prior incorporate additional public outreach to complete HCD response to comments to obtained by adoption housing element. Hey, that was fast.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. This item is for basically addendum to the existing contract with Michael Baker International, who's helping the staff as a consulting aspect do the housing element update for the 6th cycle. We met late last year in December through a Zoom meeting with the state representatives from Housing Community Development, and they expressed that it was a key component of this new cycle to do public engagement, and that the draft element we're working on with Michael Baker has to incorporate stakeholder interviews and additional workshops on the latest draft we're working on is a key component of what they're looking for when they review and ultimately give us the approval. So looking at our contract from May of last year with Michael Baker, we realized we didn't have anything built into that contract for additional outreach, meaning the interviews with the stakeholders in the community regarding housing and to do additional workshop and such. So they required an addendum to the contract. We were able to reach out to Michael Baker following our meeting in December with the state and get a proposal which has the additional outreach included, and the costs associated with that is broken down in the staff report fiscal impact. The overall cost can be split between both the existing remaining funds in a LEAP grant and also through the general fund allocation. So as we're looking at in the final fiscal impact to the city, we'll be able to cover the additional outreach portion of this addendum contract, which is $24,750 through the state's LEAP grant. And then the remaining balance of the outreach contract addendum of $16,071 would be appropriated from the general fund professional services. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions the council or public may have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? Councilman Allen?
This is isn't Michael Baker the second that's the second consulting company we've used for this iteration of the housing element, is that correct?
You are correct, yes.
And do they ever say to you when we make this contract, okay, for these tens of thousands of dollars you're going to pay me, I'm going to guarantee you that I'll get this housing element approved?
No guarantee that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I know. How this outreach that Michael Baker is proposing, have they gotten specific on it yet? Like time schedule, like when are they going to do it and what are they going to do? Is it going to be like social media? Are they going to come here, advertise? Are they going to do flyers to the residents? Have they said? How is this outreach that the state's requiring of us? What is that outreach supposed to be?
Yeah, it's going to take the form of, they're going to reach out to key stakeholder housing entities and ownership rental groups within the community. So on file with staff, there's a list of key entities they'll reach out to. And then they'll also do I believe, a online Zoom public workshop for both anybody in the community and other entities. Those will be the two key outreach efforts. And then there'll be survey type questions and such to work into that. But yes, they do have a time frame. There is a shot clock. We did have to respond to the state, which sent us a notice of violation, which is included as an exhibit in the staff report agenda item. So we've had to tell them about our rough time frame in order to get them to, agree to our, proceeding forward path to hopefully an approval letter and ultimately certification and whatever associated implementation measures we'll have to do, like rezones and such post certification.
So what is that time? I mean, what are we looking at, like summertime, next year?
Oh, no, I believe we're trying to get all this wrapped up before October. Housing element itself. So everything will be mainly taking place April, May, June. with July, I believe, being the end date for everything. To come back with a final draft with everything incorporated to share with the community, ultimately the council, then to transmit that up to the state for their review.
Thanks a lot.
Any other questions? No. Any public comment?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, no questions, no public comment. Bring it back to council for deliberation and a request to move. Councilman Henderson?
I also ask for this item to be removed from the consent calendar. I support the staff recommendation. I want to make that clear. I asked for the item to be removed because the mayor and I recently attended a League of California Cities conference on the Mayor and City Council Academy. And there was quite a bit of discussion regarding the housing element law in California and what cities were doing to meet with the approval of the Department of Housing and Community Development. Long story short, I would invite my colleagues, those in the audience and the viewing audience, to Google the City of Beverly Hills. The City of Beverly Hills is a very similar situation as the City of Grand Terrace. And the local Superior Court imposed a building moratorium on the City of Beverly Hills. The City of Beverly Hills has been instructed not to approve any building permits whatsoever unless they are for housing and housing-related activities. The reason why I mention this is because I believe in fixing the problem, not fixing the blame. So I want to make that clear. But we need to approach this project with a heightened sense of urgency, because we run the risk of having the same thing that happened to the City of Beverly Hills, and we have a guillotine hanging over the heads of the City of San Bernardino. If the City of San Bernardino doesn't submit a housing element that's approved by the state sometime this year, the same action taken in the city against the City of Beverly Hills will be taken against the City of San Bernardino. And I'll tell you this, I was a former employee of the City of San Bernardino for 11 years. And we had a citizen group file suit against the city, and it was found that our housing element, our general plan was not compliant with state law, primarily as a result of a non-compliant housing element. The State Office of Planning and Research imposed a 2-year building moratorium on the City of San Bernardino. Now, I don't know how many of you were around, but in 1987, when this took place, through 1989, the economy was booming. All that passed over the City of San Bernardino during that 2-year period of time, and it's yet to recover. We had to submit 200 projects to the local Superior Court to determine whether or not the development entity had a vested right to develop. That's a legal term in terms of the actions taken by both the developer and the granting agency, the City of San Bernardino, to determine whether or not they had a right to go forward with the project. Out of the 200 projects that were submitted to the Superior Court, only 30 were approved by the court to continue with their development. They were determined to have a vested right of development. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart for obvious reasons. When you look through the documentation on our housing element review, we've been at this for the better part of 4 years, since 2020, I think was the first letter I saw from February of 2020, indicating to the former city manager what actions that needed to be taken. So now it's February 2024, and good intentions won't take care of it, you know. The state is far more aggressive regarding housing element law and the associated legislation that's been adopted over the last few years. Governor Newsom is much more aggressive than his predecessors, and as a result, that's now being reflected in the actions taken by the Department of Housing and Community Development. We have a lot of good things in the pipeline here in Grand Terrace, good things for the community. And the last thing we need is a building moratorium that won't allow those significant projects on the horizon to actually come into fruition. So thank you for listening to me during this time. Mr. Mayor, I recommend that we adopt item number 6.
Councilmember Allen.
So I'd like to, thank you, Council Member Henderson, for that explanation, but I just want to make sure that anybody who's listening to your explanation doesn't leave here thinking that our staff dropped the ball, because this is not a problem unique to Grand Terrace or Beverly Hills. Every city, just about every city in the state of California, the Housing and Community Development Office at the state level has given them a thumbs down on their housing element. And the reason is not the city's fault. The city meets the requirement, and then the state changes the requirement. And so we're back, and then they throw it right back at us and say, oh, you're out of compliance. So anyway, I just want everybody listening to know that our staff works very, very hard to try to make this work and to meet the requirements. And so and I do support this also. I'd like for the measure for Michael Baker and our staff to be successful in this year. So of course, I'm with you on this, Councilman Henderson. I support this effort.
Mayor Pro Tem.
After having been involved with various jurisdictions and agencies over time, this reminds me a little bit of what Metropolitan Water District uses as a policy when you submit items for plan check or for some kind of an adoption. And this is the same thing that's happened in this case. You submit the stuff in accordance with what the then rules are, and as Jeff just talked about, what happens in reality is the authorities have a little different agenda than you or I might have. And what they do usually is they will, without too much detail, tell you that you've missed the mark. And if you haven't missed the mark, they'll change the goalposts. And in the meantime, what they'll do is send it back to you and say, okay, so fix it. And the smartest thing, and what we try to adopt here at the city, is that we try to give people guidance. It's not let's go chase the mouse through the hole. Instead, what it's really supposed to be is an educational process. And as they are, the agencies are the ones that set the precedents to begin with, they've got the perfect catbird seat. So instead of, helping guide through the process, what they do oftentimes is they'll pull back and say, well, it's not up to us to tell you how you're supposed to do this. Now, that is a silly way of managing things, but unfortunately, in the political climate that we are under today, that's exactly what happens. The larger the organization, the worse it gets. And after dealing with Metropolitan Water District, which I'm sure a lot of you know about, how large they are and what they control, that's exactly what I ran into. And it is very difficult to manage. And after 50 years of dealing with those kinds of circumstances, it's understandable that our staff is pursuing it hard and fast, but at the same time, no one, including consultants, will guarantee the results. So we will continue, I am sure, and I've been assured, continue to pursue the situation. And I understand the immediacy, and I know our city manager understands the immediacy, and he is also involved, of course, with the businesses and the residents that are affected by this morass. unfortunately. So we will chase it as hard and as fast as we can and be as expedient as we can. But miracles are really hard to accomplish. So I really appreciate the effort of our staff, our city attorney, our city manager, and we will continue to do the best job that we can to keep ourselves out of the mud pit. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussions? Okay, we have a first by Councilmember Henderson and a second by Councilmember Allen. City Attorney, you have anything to add on that? Okay, we have a first and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Item 7, consideration of resolution of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace approving a form reimbursement invitation agreement to the use of relation to development projects within the city and authorize execution thereof by the city manager, subject to the city attorney approval as form.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight I'm presenting a brief report on this item. Under state law, cities can recover their costs related to applications for building permits and land use entitlements. And generally, cities cannot recover any more than the reasonable cost of providing those services. But as we're seeing with development throughout the state, development isn't easy. And you're getting into more environmental reviews, sometimes legal issues as well. And cities want to make sure that they're able to recover those costs as well when it's in furtherance of a development. So what I have been recommending to each of my clients is to implement a reimbursement agreement program to ensure that the city is not footing the bill when legal fees are required, when consultant fees are required, whether it could be a CEQA consultant, it could be a land surveyor, things of that sort. We'd want to make sure that the city is made whole and not doing things at the city's dime for private development. So tonight I'm recommending adoption of a resolution that would allow the city manager to enter into reimbursement and indemnification agreements with private developers. The agreement would allow for the city to recover its consultant fees and attorney's fees. Also, it would require that a developer where the project is litigated against, many times CEQA is an issue, where a project CEQA determination is challenged by an outside group, that the private developer indemnify the city for its costs in defending the lawsuit. So the resolution would authorize the city manager to enter into the template agreements, obviously subject to negotiation with the private developer and input with the city attorney. And that's it. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions? None? Do we have any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilman. You got to raise your hand higher, buddy.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have about 13 questions and comments, which I have a recommended solution to it. In light of what we anticipate this being a long evening, I would hope that the council would indulge me in my motion a substitute motion to continue this matter to the next meeting. In the meantime, I would provide the questions and comments to the city manager and the city attorney so that they could be answered as part of the next agenda process and hopefully expedite the review and approval of this process.
I'll second it.
Any other discussions? So you're making a motion to bring this back?
To continue to the next regular meeting.
And Councilmembers Allen, your second?
I second that motion.
City Attorney, you have anything before we?
No, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, please vote.
Motion passes with council members Allen, Henderson, Rodriguez Robles voting yes, Mayor Hussey voting yes, and Mayor Pro Tem Wilson votes no.
And may the city clerk just confirm that there were no speakers on this item?
There were no public comments.
Thank you.
For item number 7.
Okay, so we'll bring this back. Let's move on to public hearing. Item 11, introduction to first reading of the title only and future reading waive as ordinance amending title 12.08 street. So before we begin, do we have any ex parte communications or conflict of interest on this in the council? No? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. Shanita Tillman, Senior Management Analyst, Public Works Department. The staff report before you supports the following goal. Goal number 2, maintain public safety. The city introduced ordinance number 64, incorporating Chapter 12.08 into the Grand Terrace Municipal Code. It aimed to establish regulations governing excavations and trenching within the public right-of-way by project applicants, residents, and utility companies. Subsequent amendments occurred in 1990 with ordinance number 125, specifically addressing cash deposits and regulations related to public service companies. In 2005, ordinance 218 was enacted imposing fines for noncompliance with the established regulations. And finally, in 2020, ordinance number 330 was introduced, granting the City Council authority over fees and deposits associated with excavations and trenching within the public right-of-way. The intention of the proposed amendment is to streamline content, removal of attachment A specifications for construction within the right-of-way, update existing street pavement moratorium, grandfather recently completed paved streets into the moratorium, and with approval, adoption of the ordinance. We have added new definitions relevant to our existing projects, including slurry seal and street overlay. We're updating the term excavation permit to encroachment permit because that is the permit that Public Works does have. At the end of Chapter 12.08, there is Attachment A titled Specifications for Construction Within the Right-of-Way. Staff requests the removal of this section because the city currently follows San Bernardino County specifications and the Green Book standard by Caltrans rather than having its own standards. Contractors are required to adhere to all current standards, guidelines, and specifications as directed by the city engineer. Approximately 2 years ago, we hired an engineer with the primary focus on improving our streets and sidewalks. In this image, you will see streets that have been completed during his tenure. He has successfully resurfaced major thoroughfares and plans to extend the plan to additional residential streets in the near future. The introduction of the revised pavement moratorium will include new section 12.08.320, new pavement moratorium. It's designated to mitigate pavement degradation and uphold street structural integrity, and aims to ensure a smooth surface for all transportation modes and minimize negative visual impacts. That one's tough to read. And an element that was added since our last council meeting was, as possible, to require jack and boring along our main thoroughfares to once again diminish negative impacts on highly trafficked streets. Those streets would include Barton Road, Mount Vernon Avenue, DeBerry Street, Van Buren Street, Pico Street, Main Street, and Observation Street. Also, the introduction of a restriction on excavations, trenching, or overlay on streets newly paved for 5 years and slurry sealed streets for 3. And a key goal is to include newly paved streets completed from fiscal year 21-22 onwards from their filed notice of completion date into the proposed moratorium, and this would aid in the preservation of the street. An exception may be granted by the Public Works Department or engineer in cases involving public safety hazards or utility upgrades to enhance service quality or adapt to technical advancements. Additionally, infrastructure expansions may be considered if the city experiences substantial growth requiring support for new development. And staff recommends the following: to introduce and conduct the first reading by title only of the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 12.08 street excavations, and if approved, staff will return for a second reading and adoption. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Dillons. Any questions for staff? None? Do we have any public comment?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, no public comment, no staff questions. I'll bring it back to staff for deliberation and vote. Anybody want to make a motion or a second or move forward?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to compliment staff on following through on Mayor Pro Tem Wilson's recommendation on boring. I think that's critical for going forward for our streets and the programs and the dollars that we put into it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So is you making a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this item.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Henderson. Please vote.
And before we do, we'll read the title of the ordinance.
I knew you were going to say that.
You know I had to jump in at some point. All right.
Okay. Yeah, and it was written down too, so I forgot to ask.
The title of the ordinance is as follows: An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, State of California, amending Chapter 12.08 street excavations of Title 12 Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code in its entirety by establishing excavation and trenching standards.
Thank you. Next time I'll turn the page before I ask for a vote. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So next item is priority funding recommendation, community development block grant, funds of program year 2024-25. Ms. Tillman, you're up again.
Yes. Okay, the following presentation is for CDBG funding recommendations for 2024-2025 program year. The staff report before you supports goal number 4, develop and implement successful partnerships, ensuring effective collaboration with community groups and both private and public sector agencies to facilitate the delivery of services and benefiting the youth, seniors, and community as a whole. Community Development Block Grant, also known as CDBG, aims to enhance low to moderate income communities, offering funding for capital improvements and public service projects in participating cities. These projects include building community facilities, parks, and roads, providing public services to residents, and supporting initiatives for group job creations. The city of Grand Terrace is among four cities receiving less than $150,000 in funding, which limits us to funding only 4 programs. However, this allows us to utilize unprogrammed funds. These funds, which are unspent funds from previous years, typically reserved for construction programs, can be repurposed for public service programs. And our expected allocation is $55,015. Before you are the applications that were submitted to the city. The adult literacy program supports illiterate adults with tutoring, literacy skills, and self-confidence, fostering participation in job applications, voting, and aligning with the vision for lifelong learning, benefiting both adults and their children. And FSA is seeking to support the continued operation at the Grand Terrace Senior Center, which has seen a substantial growth since establishing the program coordinator position in 2017. The coordinator ensures a safe and vibrant community by overseeing daily operations and organizing events and activities to engage seniors, while also providing nutritious meals through FSA's Senior Nutrition Program to seniors age 62 and older, promoting food security, independence, and a healthy well-being. Before you is the goal of the city, and that's to match the requests of the applicants. The San Bernardino County Grand Terrace Library is requesting $10,000, and the city seeks to match that. Family Services is requesting $10,000 for their senior nutrition program, and we are seeking to match that. And Family Services is also requesting $70,000. Of the remaining allocation, we only have $36,020, but since we are able to use unprogrammed funds, that $34,000 would match that difference, which would complete that 70,000 in total. So the total requested amount and recommended amount is 90,000. Staff's recommendation is to conduct a public hearing for the recommendation of eligible applications for the 2024-2025 project year and prioritize funding allocations and authorize staff to submit the City of Grand Terrace funding recommendation to the San Bernardino County Economic Development Agency. Any questions?
Council, any question? Councilman Allen?
Hi, thanks for that report, Ms. Tillman. And I would like to know if we keep or if we get reports back on the CDBG funds that we allocate, like, for example, library's adult literacy program, $20,000 annually. You know, what does that $20,000 pay for, and how many illiterate adults are benefited from that?
Excuse me, we're not, so I did say match. So they're requesting 10,000, and we have to front that 10,000. So they won't get 20,000 in total. They will only get 10,000.
So even for 10,000?
So we don't receive any updates as to the progress of their program. Because they are San Bernardino County and the agency that is CDBG is with San Bernardino County, they report directly to them, whereas Family Services is a private agency, so we're able to get more information because they're actually, because we're able to, we have like a direct contact, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we are able to get information and numbers as to the number of people that they're servicing monthly.
Can we
with their food
require that of them when they get the request? Can we say, okay, we need to have that information back?
We can definitely
You
add
know,
that into.
to analyze whether the money's being spent in an efficient manner.
That can definitely be something that is added into their agreement.
I don't mean with FSA.
With
I
the-
don't mean with
Oh,
just
with the
them. I meant
literacy-
like also
okay.
with the library literacy program, you know.
That could be something that we can look into for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, now, do we have any public comment?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, bring it back to the council for deliberation and motion.
Move staff approval.
Then I'll second it.
First by Councilman Henderson, second by Councilman Allen. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Tillman. So item F, unfinished business, none. Item G, new business. Before we get into new business, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. There's coffee and coffee and cookies out there if you want some. But we'll be back here at 7:35. All right, we'll go ahead and go reconvene for the new business at 7:35. Item 13, information and process application, the difference between general purpose and special purpose tax and requirements of adoption by city council, actions of adoption by initiative, requirements for each process, and the timing associated with placing items on the ballot. City Manager, Conrad?
So we are back discussing this and giving some clarification on specifically what the steps are for adoption, and then secondarily for a couple other issues that came up in our discussion last time with this. So we'll jump right in. There's a couple of different ways to adopt this, and we'll cover the different ways. One of them is a city-initiated general purpose tax. That means the city starts the process via resolution or ordinance, and the tax is a general purpose tax, which theoretically the money could be spent for anything. We, of course, as a group, have decided that our priority is law enforcement. A general purpose tax is approved. It needs to be approved by 4 of the 5 council members. And if I'm going off the reservation, give me a stop there, Mr. City Attorney. And then the tax would then go to the voters where they're approved by 50% majority, and then it would be part of a general election. There's a city-initiated special purpose tax, very similar to the general purpose tax. It's done by ordinance. 4 of the 5 council members have to approve it. This tax has to be approved by 2/3 of the voter. The general purpose tax has the money very specifically earmarked for a purpose. And for that purpose, the ordinance has to include an expenditure plan with what the specific projects are that the revenues will go for. And then the tax can be introduced in the next election. And we're not allowed to do this on any kind of special election. It has to be the next general election. So with both of them, both of the city-initiated prospects, we have to adopt a resolution prior to, or for the next general election. The last day to submit that is August 9th. We'd like to do that as early as possible if that is the path that we run down, a city-initiated, to help with the messaging. Also that there's time involved in putting this together, getting things on the ballot. And so the more time that's involved in this, the better for the chances of adoption. And then there's the rest of the steps. There'll be some filing. We're filing a rebuttal, the argument for the rebuttal arguments. And then at some point, the council will need to do a first reading by title only, like we did just earlier for the other 2 items. And then the second reading happens after the election. So just the first reading to get it out on the record. The other path is a voter-initiated tax. It follows the same path for both general purpose and special purpose. So there's no real distinction on the voter-initiated, whether it's general purpose for anything or special purpose for a specific fund. So with that, the proponents, they have to circulate a petition, or have to get a notice of intent from the city clerk to circulate a petition. The city attorney then has to give us a title. There's a notice published that the citizen proponents have to publish at their expense. And then after publication or posting, then the title and summary is filed with the city clerk. There's more steps as we go. At this point then, they can circulate the petition for signatures. So there's a time frame that will be lost in that voter initiative as we're doing those first steps. The signatures need to have 10% of the registered voters from the last general election. And then the city clerk, then once that is in, will validate the signatures, so forward it to the register of voters. And then upon verification is when we can submit for the next election. So there's a pretty long process that's involved in doing this. And once that's submitted, then we're kind of back where we were on the city attorney develops an analysis. There's the pro and con arguments, the rebuttal arguments, and then a comment period that's allowed for review of those the pro and con arguments, and before it goes on to the ballot. So with that, I'm going to go back and pause.
Where's the part about how many votes you have to get? Where's the part about the special tax, what it means when it's voter initiative, and how many votes you have to get for it to pass?
From a voter initiated, it's 50%.
Yeah, why isn't it in your presentation?
A very good question. And I should have, I apologize. It is 50% for either path. So both the general purpose and the special purpose is a 50% for
versus a 66% for us.
Versus a 50% for a general purpose and a 66% for a special purpose.
But for us, it's 2/3, 66%.
No. It is for a general purpose, one that is not assigned to any specific fund or any specific activity, is a 50%.
Yes. I'm talking for a voter initiated, not us.
Okay. For a voter initiated, both general purpose and special purpose are 50%.
Right.
Okay.
And if you explain the special tax, okay, if we were to do a general tax, by law, it could be spent on anything,
Correct.
okay? But if we did a special tax, it could only, and we called out law enforcement, it could only be spent on law enforcement. Same with the residents, if they were to do a special tax, it would call out law enforcement and could only be spent on law enforcement.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the special tax for the voter is 50%, and for council initiated is 2/3. Are there other questions on the process or what's going on?
I have a comment on the limitations placed on general tax. Even though you can't apply the strictures that you would on a special tax, if you recall at the last council meeting when we took this up, I asked the city attorney whether as a matter of policy, for instance, the city council could establish an audit committee and reporting requirements that are more related to a special tax than a general tax. And there were a number of examples that I gave, and the city attorney indicated that the council could do that, understanding that a future council could undo that, undo those policy decisions. But as a matter of course, the city council could establish an audit committee. The audit committee could report to the council on an annual basis and report to the community as to how the funds were being used for the intended purpose, which is law enforcement.
Yes, and I think that's a prudent course of action and kind of outside of our adoption process, but as a city manager, I would strongly encourage that we create some type of oversight of these funds. At some point, there's going to be a council or city manager that wants to get their hands on that. And there needs to be oversight and the ability of the citizens, the residents, and the rest of the council to throw a flag and stop that.
But it's not legally binding, correct?
It can be reversed by a future council. You cannot bind a future council. So
Why couldn't a current city council do it?
We could then create a oversight board, audit committee, something that would review how those funds are expended. This would operate in however the council determines, but a future council could decide that they don't want that and eliminate that.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Is there a way we can enshrine it so they cannot, a future council cannot? We could make it we could mandate it by resolution or ordinance that there be an oversight committee?
We can do an ordinance, we can do a resolution, but a future council can change an ordinance. We're doing that. We did that earlier tonight, and so it can be done. The only way to make sure that it cannot be undone is to have a special purpose tax.
Speaking only for myself, I feel that if the specific restrictions or strictures imposed by policy by the city council are successfully implemented, I could anticipate a significant uprising of the Grand Terrace community if a future council diverged from those policy decisions made by the city council that initiated this process and helped.
Is that a question?
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
I'm sorry?
You have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a question?
Thank you. My understanding, and to clarify for the public, is that you create a line item set aside, which we have done in the past, and also set up possibly an audit oversight committee. And if what that does is it sets up a chain of paper, basically, so that the intent of the fund was to be administrated correctly, and if it does go astray, any succeeding city council would be also prey to a lawsuit from the citizenry. If they start going sideways from that use, you know, every idiot has the opportunity to sue. And if they felt as if there was misuse, you'd have a committee that would be helping in that judgment, and then easily a citizen could come up and sue the city saying, hey, what are you doing with our funds that you tax us for? So I think we're pretty rock solid in our administration of a general tax.
So I don't know about a lawsuit, that Adrian can answer that, but if we do set up a committee and a review process, you know, the ultimate lawsuit, there's an election every 2 years. And
that too.
So
thank you.
Yeah, and they can choose new city managers.
Any other questions? All right. City Manager, you got some more to report?
Yeah, if there's no questions on the process, there were a couple questions that were brought up. Let me see if I can get there. On the revenue stream and what that would look like. So I broke down and made some assumptions, and you know what that means. So we do know that we have about $1,965,000 as an estimated revenue from the proposed tax, regardless of the mechanism that would come in. There's a reallocated transaction tax. This is for vehicles, large item purchases, whatever. Right now, if you go buy a car in Redlands or San Bernardino or Riverside, your sales tax stays in that city. When we have the transaction tax, that sales tax comes back to us. So it's taxes that are already paid by our residents. They just go to another city. About $228,000 is business-to-business taxes. These are companies that buy things from companies in Grand Terrace. They're not located in, you know, the buyer's not located in Grand Terrace, and therefore that's not a burden on our residents either. So that leaves about $912,000 of, for lack of a better word, burden on the residents that we have to come up with additional tax money. So with that, not all the burden is on residents. It's somewhere greater than zero because I buy gas and food here in the city, and it's somewhere less than 100 because you buy gas and food here, you know, other places and here in the city. So we have to make some assumptions on that. And I took a 30% assumption for both fuel and dining. Dining is 20% of our sales tax, fuel is 20% of our sales tax. So we backed out about $104,000 of that, which leaves a burden on the residents of about $807,000. Divided it by the number of residents, and that works out to $62 per year, or $5.18 per resident per month. If we assume a zero, which we know it's not, it's $585. And then if we assume a higher one, which it probably is not either, you know, it falls down to $475. So somewhere in that range is probably where our true burden is. Any questions on that? Okay. And I think that is it. Are there any further questions on any of this?
Council have any further questions? And now we'll go to public hearing and bring it back for council deliberation.
Jessica Brown.
Ms. Brown, come to the podium, please.
Good evening, Mayor Hussey, members of the City Council. My name is Jessica Brown, and I have the opportunity to serve as a chair on the Citizen Committee to Enhance Law Enforcement Services, and made a presentation to Council this past December with recommendations of the committee. The committee was formed at the request of the City Council and resulted in 11 members being appointed with various backgrounds from public safety, public finance, and various private sectors. I do want to point out that contrary to comments made at the last meeting, that every citizen that had submitted an application actually was appointed to the committee. We were tasked with researching ways to secure funding to enhance law enforcement services and present its recommendations to council. With respect to voter turnout and what that looks like, I just want to make a point that over our last election, we have currently in the city of Grand Terrace 7,853 registered voters. 3,607 are the voters that actually turned out. And in an election for this special tax that we are recommending, you would only need 50% plus one, which would be the 1,805 voters. Now, the committee did its part. We did our research. The facts that presented to council back in December showed that population has increased. The average deputy per population is lower as compared to other comparable cities. Call volume has increased. Average calls per deputy is higher than any comparable agency. Response times have increased. Average monthly mutual aid is over 400 hours. Traffic has increased by nearly 14% in the last 5 years alone, and public safety staffing decreased by 25%, which also decreased our deputies' safety. And I don't know about you, but I think $6 a month is worth, at the very least, the safety of our deputies. In order to increase staffing, one 24/7 deputy would actually take an increase of nearly 5 deputies to provide 24/7 coverage. It would an increase in command staffing, an increase in patrol units, as well as increase in equipment. So this is what the $1.7 million increase would fund. The committee is recommending the transaction and use tax for multiple reasons. However, I want to say the one that resounded with us was the fact that our need for increased public safety isn't just related to our citizens that live in the community, but the external factors, such as increased through traffic, increased visits to our businesses, and crimes committed by non-residents. The transaction use tax would result in added costs being shared by non-residents who benefit from those services, and the year-over-year revenue growth is more likely to keep up with associated costs. The committee is asking the council to support its recommendation to move forward by placing the 1% transaction and use tax on the November ballot and let the citizens decide its fate. Thank you. Committee representatives are here this evening if you have any additional questions for us.
Thank you. No. We'll wait till later. It's public comment right now. Do you want to ask her a question? Okay. 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 No, go ahead. If you don't want to know. Ms. Brown, we have a question.
I just want to ask you a question about the number of registered voters. So you had mentioned I think you said that there are around 7,800, is that correct?
Correct.
Registered voters?
Correct.
And at the last election, you said there was 3,000 and something voted?
46% turnout.
Yeah. So, and then what was that last number you had? The one?
So of the 3,600 voters that turned out, in order to pass the measure, you would require 50% plus one, which would be 1,805 votes.
Okay, so based on those, which one of those numbers do you pull the 10% from that you need if you had a citizens initiative? How many signatures would you need?
Yeah, that number, I'm not 100%
Isn't it
sure.
10% of the last number of registered voters at the last election? Which would mean 780 signatures, is that it? Or would it be 360?
10% of the registered voters at the last election. So that would be the 700 and something signatures.
So it'd be about 780 signatures you'd need. Okay, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk.
Edward Drew. Oh.
Is that correct?
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, thank you. I was one of the members on this ad hoc committee, and I have to say the city put in position quite a group of people to be able to do this. Our chair and vice chair were a great asset. I also want to compliment staff. Anything that we requested from staff, we got from staff. We had all kinds of data to be able to come to the conclusion that our chair has brought to your attention today. I also want to thank Lieutenant Lane. He was very open with answering any question under different scenarios of how we could make this work with additional, what it would cost and how it works to get additional members. But me, as well as being a retired member of law enforcement, I had to run a resident post. And when you have a resident post, you have a budget. So I had 8 folks, 8 members, officers, and then me as a sergeant running this resident post. And I can honestly say, I did not meet my budget request year after year after year. They went up. And the way I was looked at as far as my ability to manage a budget was the calls for service and demands and all that stuff in relationship justified for being outside the budget. And every year it came. So they never held it against me for that reason. And there's no difference here in Northern California running a resident post. This is going to be right here in our community. We're going to have increased calls for demands. It is shown year over year. But the biggest thing that I find from this 1% tax is that it is the most fairest way for the community and anybody sharing in our community to be able to pay for this additional service. And the biggest benefit will be for the Sheriff's Department. Face it, I want those deputies out here protecting us, knowing that we're behind them and want them to have the people to help them get their job done and make sure they're not hurt in the process. Because as those numbers increase, we've also had some members of the department hurt trying to protect us here in our community. So I would ask that the city do move this forward so that we can protect our community better and support the members of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Michael Gomez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Michael Gomez, longtime resident of City Grand Terrace. In my opinion, public safety and public safety funding is the top priority. I was excited to learn months ago when the council had created this ad hoc committee to research the funding options for police services and quickly submitted my application. The committee met several times and discussed various options for funding this item. The committee unanimously agreed the best way to fund the services was through a transaction tax. Though there are multiple options for a transaction tax to go to the public for a vote, it's my opinion that the clearest message to the public regarding public safety and public safety funding is for the council to vote to place this item on the ballot. And I request the council support the ad hoc committee's recommendations and vote to place this item on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Dan Flores.
Good evening, Mayor Hussey and council members. My name is Dan Flores, and I have lived in Grand Terrace for over 30 years. Since I've lived here, there has been a lot of changes, some good, some bad. But mostly what I've noticed that our crime rate has strongly increased. I agree with the committee that we need to put this issue on the ballot for November. The number one thing here is the safety of our city. That is priority. The committee has given you the figures on what it is going to cost and what we need to bring in the extra revenue for another officer. So let's do the right thing and move forward to get this issue on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flores.
Michelle Sabino.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to talk about last time we were here, we brought this issue up again, and we respectfully requested that not only this measure be considered, but move forward by this council. And in my statement, I reminded our council and those in the room that our current contract in place is 46 years old. It's from 1978. And that Grand Terrace is not what it was at that time. We've grown. We have growth around us. Our traffic isn't what it used to be. We're a pathway for people who are averting the traffic through the 60, the 90, and the 91 and the 215. And we have a homeless issue. Just the other day, as I was taking my daughter out, I had to take her back inside because there was a gentleman sleeping on the corner. And then he got up and then began moving towards us, and we can't even walk the streets anymore because it's not safe. We have people who can't go to their cars at the grocery store with their children without being chased to their car or their windows being hit. In 2021, 2022, and 2023, we had a deputy who was assaulted on each incident. Those 3 incidents are too many for a town our size. They don't have backup. They don't have a partner to respond. They have to wait for outside resources. And if that's not a red flag for this council, I don't know what it is. We must do our due diligence, not only in protecting our law enforcement officers, but also in protecting our residents. We already heard from the fire department that if we lose funding, we could see our fire department shut down in this city and no longer serve. We don't have the funds to even fund basic safety. We're barely having our daily needs met by this council and this governance. And so it makes sense for this to be moved forward. If anyone in this room says, the tax is just not something that we're agreeing with because it's just overkill, then I suggest you stop shopping in places like Colton, Corona, Ontario, Redlands, Riverside, and San Bernardino. If you're absolutely against and have a strong arm against being able to accumulate funds from those who are passing through our town, spending their dollars here, who should be investing in our community that serves them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Johan Gallo.
He already spoke on this issue. But make your own rules.
So here we are. You ask us to convene a committee of very talented people that work diligently to put together a report for you. We've shown the history that a petition took 7, with an extension 8 months to get enough signatures to put it on a ballot, and it failed by 150 signatures. Now we're kind of floating the idea, let's maybe look at a petition again. Let's just quit talking about it, okay? Michelle already talked about the number of deputies that have been beat down because they didn't have support. How about my daughter that's barricaded in her house with 2 daughters while we're waiting for units to roll out? We have a mayor pro tem that hasn't even owned up to the fact that he had a takeover at his house. Okay? Now, when are we going to get serious about this? You're charged to do your job. You know the only thing that's consistent sitting up there at the dais right now? That's Mayor Hussey. He's been there along with us all along. Everything that we needed to do to try and find resources for this city, he's been there. We have a saying in our group, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Our citizens are on the menu, okay? You got all the homeless that come through here. You got businesses right now that have to call the sheriff because their customers can't come in the front door. I was in 2 of those businesses this last week because the homeless are harassing them. We can pick on J.C. Wallace and all this other stuff. Why don't we just take it off the table right now? Because even before they got here, we had a problem. And we've done nothing about it in 7 years. So do your job. Move this thing forward, get it on the ballot, and help Lieutenant Lane protect his deputies who protected my daughter and her family when they were at risk. Thank you.
Point of order, can we return to how the meeting's supposed to be? If you already spoke on a topic during public comment. It was the agenda item. So it's two
Well,
terms.
I asked the city clerk if that was an agenda item or a public comment. She said public comment. When Mr. Gohan spoke before?
There was obviously a misunderstanding.
Okay. All right. All right, do we have anybody else for public comment?
Bobby Forbes.
Ms. Forbes?
There we go, thank you. You all know how I feel about this. Please move forward. Let our citizens vote, and I will do my best to get them to vote yes. I'm probably the least educated that was on this committee, but I'm on the streets with the people. I'm out and about, and I feel that we worked hard as a team, and this is what our community needs. We have 2 code enforcement officers for this little town and 1 deputy. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous in my eyes. Everybody at City Hall is overstaffed. I believe that. But these deputies are not safe in their jobs protecting us. They have a really great track record. When I call them, they come, and I never have a 911 call. It's usually come check on a person or help me close the park or monitor somebody that I see laying on the street, something like that. I don't think I've ever called 911. But they deserve more protection while they're protecting us. And we've worked hard for many years. There was a time when we had multiple deputies. I myself felt much safer. I worry about my safety now. I no longer go to work after dark. I don't have clients come to my office if it's going to be dark when we're finished, because there's issues with people trying our doors all the time. They come through our building. It's a big building. They're looking to see if anything was left open. One night I left that door open, and they came in and stole some stuff from the office. They didn't get anything in my office. I don't know why. I was lucky that night, I guess. But we need protection. We have more homeless. We have J.C. Wallace. We have truckers. We have people sleeping in their cars. We need protection, and this community deserves it. Please step forward, vote this yes so that we get it on our ballot, and I'll do my job, which is to get the people to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Any other public comment?
No, Mayor, that's all.
All right, go close public comment, bring it back to council for deliberation. Anybody have any comment? Councilman Henderson?
I think the way forward is clear. The council should take an action placing it on the November 24 ballot. $5.18 a month. That won't even pay for a latte. So give up that latte, we get a new sheriff. I want to congratulate once again the committee, the work it's done. Jessica, I forgot your last name, but you did an outstanding job as chair and reporting to the council, making, in my opinion, my jobs easier. So I'm ready to move forward. Hopefully my colleagues agree with me. Thank you.
Councilman Allen?
Thanks, Mayor. Now, maybe this was mentioned, Mr. City Manager, in your report that you gave us. I'm not quite sure. I don't recall. Can you tell us again? I mean, there's a couple of cities that are going through the same initiative process already. Can you tell us what the cost looks like at the, the educational cost and all that to get a measure on the ballot for the city?
Well, the cost to put on the ballot isn't the cost. There is, though, an education and marketing and consulting cost. So Colton did that last year. They spent about $200,000. Actually, I had a phone call with the city manager from Chino today and her staff, and they really broke down what they did. And they had about $90,000 in consulting as far as strategy, how to put together the marketing. They had about $45,000 in putting together brochures and documents and videos and messages. They had about $25,000 in surveys, and then they have their postage, whatever else. Chino's a city of about 90,000 people, and they estimate about 3,500 households. So it's a much larger city, but they're estimating by the time they're done, they're going to be into this for over 200, maybe 250,000. And so whether that scales or whether, a survey costs what a survey costs, I don't know. But that's the two cities that did it recently. We did the TOT, the transit occupancy tax, about a year ago, and we spent about $50,000 on that. And I was not happy with the quality of the work that we got out of our consultants. So we would probably, if we were to do that again, I'd probably find somebody better and more expensive.
So you get what you pay for, in other words?
I would assume so.
Yeah, so at least a couple of 100,000 or so, or 250 to get a ballot initiative, a measure properly out in the community with enough.
That's seems to be
using
what
the
the
consulting,
market
yeah.
is going. For Colton, it is 200, and Chino's going to be about 250. Now, granted, they're larger cities, but I don't know that it necessarily scales.
Okay, so, all right, thanks. $250,000, okay, thanks.
Councilman Robles?
I had asked you how much it cost when we did Measure C, and I guess I'm the only one here that was on the council at the time. $44,000 wasn't what we spent. We spent more like $179,000 because we had the consultant, and polling, and then the $44,000 that you gave me was just for the voter education mailing part. Now, there seems to be, a lot of animosity going on about my position on this. I've sat here for 11 years. One of the first things that hit was we had a 10-year battle with the city of Colton about whether we're going to increase sewer fees. Based on my experience with special districts and water and sanitation, I says, why don't we let Colton lease the sewer system? They can put it as an asset, and it was solved. Then we got some residual money from that, and Ken Henderson was our acting city manager at that time. And we had just under $500,000 that was going to be one-time money. So, I pushed for that to go into these little grants that you see for community-based organizations when Little League or basketball and all that come. The other thing that I pushed for and we did was we couldn't afford a sheriff, but because I didn't want and others didn't want to see one sheriff deputy, we did an overtime to try to abate that. Now, going back to why we're repeating ourselves from January is because the kind of information I got was shoddy. All the agenda items said was, if I vote this way and the city does it, general or special tax, that's what's on your plate. Based on my experience with special districts, and I put these items on there and I worked with consultants, I said, wait a minute, I asked the city attorney, isn't it easier for citizens to put something on the ballot? And that should have been something that was in here in January, so we all had full information. I asked how many voters, and I get, 10%. I needed to know numbers, because to me, getting 800 signatures isn't that high of a threshold. And there was an initiative to change the mayor, which is not an earth-shaking issue like funding the necessary money that we need for an additional sheriff. And that was qualified very easily for without us having to put anything on the ballot. Now, I feel my fiduciary responsibility here is to listen to the city manager, but I don't agree. And and when I went all out with a city manager was on Measure C. I was new here. I came, and the numbers that were provided to us is that we're going to go bankrupt unless we do Measure C. So we spent all this money, and you can just get 9213 or a couple of people that walked door to door, and all of a sudden it flipped. You know, the percentages were really bad. My point is, with all sincerity, I think you have the best shot of getting this done if it's citizen approved. The other issue was right before I came on board, and nobody was on the council or working for the city at that time. The governor was going to get rid of redevelopment agency funds, so that council approved bonds. And there was going to be an audit report in here. It's not, but you should, as a committee, Jessica's a strong, capable person to lead this group, and it's something you didn't have the last time. And you know, and you will see that citizens have a better way of getting this done. So the RDA, they did this bonds, and for I don't know how many years, we spent $1.5 million on debt service and interest payments for something we couldn't legally spend. So what I see as my job here is to protect you. And I had to fight for years. And Bill was here, and Ken was here, and when there was this sheriff things coming on, I says, fine, I'm gonna, you know, support this, but we gotta do something about getting rid of these bonds we can't spend. Now, I take exception when people come up here and say that they were slow as molasses, or blah, blah, blah. I worked on that parcel tax. It was withdrawn. When I set up this committee, in 2020, I went to Boston, and I got a chewing out for saying that members from this council should not be going and meeting with our legislators without being appointed to a task force. So when you guys finally came this last year and said, we want to have a committee to look at funding for the sheriffs, I didn't hear special tax. When we had Measure C, it was to look at, you know, and it was said, you know, like we go for ALARs and whatever. And again, I could have told you, a state legislature cannot fund law enforcement, which you guys found out. So, you know, when I first saw this, I was as happy as anybody else to say we're finally on board to get this done. But I really think, the fire station. So we're going to use money. We were told by the city manager, again, this is my job, and Bill Hussey at the time said, to sell it for $1. So if we would have sold it for $1, we wouldn't have this $1 million. So, and the other thing is we've had some noise issues in this community that we need some litigation money for. I've been pushing for years for youth services. The only thing I got out was out of that residual from the water sewer lawsuit was to go for that. We had a task force. Nobody's ever come back to us to say, you know, can we use that one-time money for seed money, and then we could leverage it for grants. So I'm just saying, I think you have a better chance getting it yourself, and I'm not for spending $200,000. We're not a wealthy city. We don't have money, and that's my position. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, you have something to say?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. I know there's been some angst among the folks about our handling of the December-January report from the committee. Let me just clarify. I believe in asking the hard questions up front. I know that that was painful. I know it was like pulling something through a fence. I'd rather do that up front than have somebody come, you know, after the fact and say, hey, wait a minute, that's, you know, I didn't know, somebody didn't notice me or something like that, and I wasn't informed. So I asked those hard questions, and I think I left the impression that I may not be for law enforcement. Yesterday, I had 2 nasty characters beat on my front door while my wife was there, and she called me. They beat on the door and then rang the doorbell several times. And she's so used to it because we've had 3 of these kinds of occasions over the years that she automatically called me and I told her to call a sheriff. And they responded as quickly as they could, and nobody came back. It's a good thing, because I sat there with a pistol in my lap waiting for them. Bottom line is, though, I am in support of additional sheriff time. And I am also in support of putting it in front of the public. I think it's our right, and I think it's important. And I'm glad that we're going to, if we do advance this, that it will start to move through the process. I'm not in support of spending money when we don't have any evidence that supports it, and that's why I asked the questions I did. All right? So that's my say. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment. Councilman Robles was right when we had an interim city manager that wanted to sell the fire department for $1, and we all just looked at each other like, no, we're not going to do that. And good thing we didn't, because we ended up getting $1 million. But sometimes there's bad decisions, sometimes there's good decisions. Now, I want to thank the committee for coming up and working hard. Your own personal time, taking away time from your family and sacrificing. And what the Grand Terrace needs and what the citizens want. This is one step that's been brought to us. And as Mayor Pro Tem said that, about the people trying to break in, I know they just had a news article about Redlands and the South American gangs coming in, trying to break in daytime, wearing hoodies. They're checking out your daily programs, what you're doing. Now we're going back to crime. In 2014, Prop 47, SB 109 passed, and 10 years later, we're seeing the results of what's happening. And now the government, the state, is trying to put little Band-Aids on something instead of repealing 47-109. And it's not going to work. And the only reason why they're starting to do stuff, because now they're losing money, they're losing sponsors, they're losing support. And my son, who's in law enforcement, and that's our daily prayer at night, that he comes back to his 4 girls, his wife, and his 3 daughters. That's a big thing. He's putting his life on the line every day to protect people. And that's a calling that people get. And sometimes we wonder why you want to do that in the state, but it's still a calling. So being that, even working in the federal prison, we always train for 3 to 4 minutes while we're fighting inmates. You go in there, you're one officer with 200 inmates. They're not locked down every day. They're let out during the day. And so at least, they're fighting in 3 minutes can be eternity. 1 minute's an eternity. We did have shootings here. Officer had to respond and shoot a lady that was coming after him. And the city had to pay for the medical care to watch over that lady after she put an officer in harm's way. So there's a lot of what ifs, what's happenings. This state has changed. We all grew up here. I was born and raised in this state. We've seen the changes. And, it's sad, but, we have to do something, be proactive for our future generations. And we do have future generations coming up here in Grand Terrace. There's young couples moving in left and right. Every time I'm walking, I'm seeing them. And what do they say? They love it here because they can still walk the streets. They want to support this city. And they moved here for that reason. And they love the close family-oriented feel that they have here. So I want these families to have the same opportunities that we had raising my kids. So what we do, I know that we came back, and it was myself, Councilman Robles, and Councilman Henderson put this on the thing. I think it was back in 2020 or something, the initiative. But we pulled it because, once again, we had the FP5 come in, and we didn't think it was going to pass because of all the controversy on that. And so that was, we pulled part back from that battle to come back and battle it again. And they were short on signatures then, and I think they started a long time ago to get signatures. Now I understand, the special tax, and I understand this tax. And is it scary that if we bring this to them, we just get a regular tax and then a council down the road might do something? Because we know that the state does that. Yeah, it could be scary, but I think the city is conservative enough and they hold people accountable where that won't happen. I think everybody in the city is on the same page as far as law enforcement. I think, the council, they hire city managers that are pretty conservative. And as a city manager would say, there's every 2 years, and as Councilman Robles would say, there's every day for the city manager. Stuff could happen. So I think the council's pretty conservative that way. So I believe that we should move forward on this, and we should give it to the council should back up and stand forward for it. And then once that's done, I believe that the residents need to go out there and do your homework. Get out there and give people homework. Let them know, educate them. $5.18. I know things can get expensive, but I talked to somebody, so that's a lot of money, and they're buying an $8 cup of coffee. I don't understand. I make my own coffee. I'm not taking away people's freedom and what they want to buy, but I'm also, $5.18 will make this city safer, our officers safer, and then also it improves our quality of life here where people still want to come here and live. So that's all I have. And, and I know once it's come and if it passes, the council will do everything in the power to keep it going. This council will. I know they will. I know Mr. Gallo pointed me out, but I can't take all the credit because there's been this whole council that's moving forward on this. I might have been this person he could talk to, but it's the council that makes this vote. One individual doesn't do this. Not one individual. It's us, the government, that's here for you guys. That's all I had to say. I'd like to, Councilman Allen.
When the county put the FP5 initiative on the ballot a few years back, they also calculated into that initiative an annual 3% increase, cost of increase. And so what I'm wondering is, because by the time, if we put this on the ballot, if this goes on the ballot and it passes, by the time we start receiving that revenue stream from this initiative, sheriff's costs have already gone up 6% more because that's their annual increase. That's what we've been told. So does there need to be, like they did with FB5, does there need to be a gradual step increase in this, annual increase in this?
Well, I think because this is I'll go ahead. Sir.
Yeah. So because it's a sales tax, the increase is built in. So as the price of gas goes up, the sales tax is a percentage of that. So it's not like a property tax where you have to increment it up every year. As prices go up, inflation goes up, the percentage of sales tax goes up as well because it's 1% of the sale price. As the sale price gets higher, that 1% gets bigger.
For legal counsel, is there an escalator available in any special tax by initiative or by us? You can do an escalator?
I'm not aware that there is that availability, but I could certainly check. I've not looked into that myself.
Any other? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask if you're ready to take a motion.
I'm ready for a motion whenever you guys are.
I move the staff recommendation, items 1 and 2 on item 13.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes with council members Allen and Henderson voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Wilson voting yes, Mayor Hussey voting yes, Councilmember Rodriguez Robles votes no.
Thank you, and thank you, board, for all your hard work. And now you're really hard work once we get everything straightened out. So. Okay. Item 13, City Council Summit opposing the Public Utility Code Tax Provisions, Section 739.9, enabling Assembly Bill 205. City Manager.
Mayor, it's item 14.
item 14, right? I said 14, didn't I? What did I say?
13.
Oh, all right.
But
I thought I said 14,
We
because we
threw-
just went through
you Threw
13.
the city manager for a loop.
Okay. Well, item 14, I read 14.
No, that's all right. You got the number right. I didn't realize I was doing this, but we'll make it up as we go along. So there has been AB 205, which is a budget trailer bill. It had a provision that removed the fixed charge cap of $10 per month on utility bills. And that allows utility companies then to raise the rates on these fixed charges indiscriminately. So what we're asking is that the council publicly oppose this practice and send such opposition to the Public Utilities Commission. Any questions?
Questions? Councilman Robles?
Isn't this moot? No, it's not going to go. Well, I'm just saying, I'll move the item, but it's already been decided not to proceed.
I am not aware of that myself.
It's in the front of today's Sun.
No, I have not seen that.
I don't know that it, as far as I know, it is still an active item. But the worst case is we approve it and it's not active.
Yeah, I had asked for this item to be placed on the agenda, and I have some experience working with investor-owned utilities, and it may be moot, as Councilwoman Robles has indicated. I hope it is, but I also know that they don't give up easily, and so it's something I think it's important for us to take the official position in opposition. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any public comment?
No, Mayor.
Bring back deliberation and vote.
I move adoption.
Councilman Robles, Councilman Robles moves adoption.
Second.
By Councilman Henderson. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, item 15. Priority projects, fiscal year 2023, 2024, 2025 review. City Manager.
All right, well, thank you. I know we've done priority projects over and over, but we are approaching the beginning of the budget cycle, finishing up mid-year, going forward into next year's budget. So as we do this, and I'd like to do this every year, is just take a look at these again, make sure that we're on path, and some of these will be falling off this year, hopefully, and that we don't miss anything that's important to the council, and that we also make sure that those things are fresh in our minds as we go forward. In the staff report, when I submitted this, I had them numbered, and it was more of a number, just a placeholder to keep track rather than a priority number. Councilmember Henderson correctly noted that we had some issues that we did submit as legislative requests, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we would like to keep those as 1, 2, 3, and 4 and not reorder our legislative requests so that we have a consistency. And frankly, those are the big ones. And the remainder, as we work down, we discussed housing element earlier this evening. That is a priority for us. It's on the list, and hopefully it'll fall off this year. Street and sidewalk repair is always up there for us, and it becomes something that we would want to keep on the list. It's probably never going to fall off. The Blue Mountain Trail land acquisition, we're getting closer and closer to the end of that thing, so that'll probably fall off this year. We're finishing up the last of the state appraisals and acceptance. The Barton Road guardrail replacement, finally, it's in engineering, so that will fall off this year. The youth programs, as Councilmember Rodriguez Robles brought up, is something that we are sorely lacking in and something that we have not done well at, and we need to do better. And that is on the list, and frankly, we just need to do better at that. Street sign replacement, it's an ongoing thing. We've done the lion's share of that. The blue street signs, I think we've got most of those. We've got a couple more left to do that are fading out. We're replacing a couple dozen more stop signs and traffic signals, but that as a project will kind of fall off. We are looking at some landscaping on Barton Road in Mount Vernon that we'd like to initiate, where there's some plans and discussion have been kicking around for years, and it's a time for us to look at that. Barton Road's bridge replacement is, it's spearheaded by Colton, but they are in the engineering phase of that. And then the general plan update, there's big sections of our general plan. The whole thing needs to be updated. We're probably not going to get that this year as we're finishing the housing element, but it needs to be on our priorities, and as we start working forward, that those pieces start to get put together for next year and the year thereafter. And then the final piece is the La Cadena median. It's kind of on the bottom of the priorities, and more of a personal thing because the city manager from Colton teases me about how bad ours looks and how nice his looks. So it is one of those things that as we progress and over time, we need to keep on that. So with that, I turn that over to you to throw any or all of them off, or to add anything else on there. And as we do our budget priorities, this is what will be driving our focus for the year. Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I just want to remind my colleagues, as the city managers indicated, we went through this exercise late last year. We actually approved the 4 top priorities in November, so just a few short months ago. And then we came back and revised the language to those 4 top priorities and submitted our request for financial assistance both to the state and the federal government through Assembly Congressman Pete Aguilar's office. So from my perspective, I believe the 4 should remain there. Having gone through some successful legislative advocacy programs over the years, if your priorities change annually, you deep six your chances of acquiring state or federal assistance. So there needs to be some consistency there. And as the manager indicated, the others can remain. I think they're aspirational for us, but that's how we should look at it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
So thank you, Councilman Henderson, for that. I just want to ask you, though, knowing what we know about the housing element update, knowing that we had been told last year, okay, it's going to get approved, so we don't need to place a high priority on it, but it didn't get approved, and we know what happens when we don't have an approved housing element. You know, you got the builder's remedy, you've got, you know, all the kinds of penalties that can happen to our city and cost our city a lot. And I'm just wondering, do we really, would moving one of these up or down increase its chances of getting taken care of any sooner? Like, for example, the housing element, which to me, I think happens to be like something that's so important that gets done so that we don't suffer the penalties the state imposes on us. And also that general plan update, you said I mean, it's all the way at the bottom of the list. I mean, I think that general plan with the hazard mitigation plan, which allows us to collect money during a FEMA declared emergency if we don't have that. So I think those 2 items are really important, and I don't see why we don't have them any higher than they are.
So I specifically removed the numbers from the staff report to this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, our priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 for legislative. The rest of them, I see them as number 1 or the next highest. These are all, we have the bandwidth to complete the ones we're working on, and these are the ones that we need to focus on this year. It's not a matter of doing one and not doing the other, because we can come up with another dozen to put on the list.
So neighborhood watch is more important than our housing element. Is that what we're saying? Or the general plan, EOP plan, is that we'd rather spend our efforts on trying to build a neighborhood watch program, which they're great and we need them, but I mean, we can suffer tremendous financial consequences by not having a housing element approved and by not having a hazard mitigation plan. You know.
So the Neighborhood Watch Program, the grant request has gone in, the legislative request is gone. At this point, we've done what we're going to do for that. And now it's time to move on to the housing element, and we'll work on that. And as you know, you take a project to a point, and then you work, it goes to some other agency, to some other action, external action happens, and we can pick up another one on this list. So I purposefully did not rank the rest of them in a priority order.
It's noted that the housing element program is funded. No matter where it is on that list in terms of priority, we've allocated the resources, both staff and financial, to bring it to fruition. So the priority on that list is not relevant to whether or not we succeed with the state. We funded staff, we funded Michael Baker. Now we have to hope for the best. And so if we change the priority of the housing element, and this is just one example, doesn't affect our chances at the state, and nor does it affect our chances in accessing state or federal funds. So we've done that as well.
And the general plan update, I mean, that's on us. That's not having anything to do with the state.
Correct.
And that's something that, yeah, so if we're just looking at the financial paying out the priorities here, if that's all this is for, you know.
But the financial and the focus on the work, as Councilmember Henderson said, you know, the housing element is, how do you put it? The ball is rolling. We don't need to kick it again for a while because we've started this project, and it's Michael Baker, but we do have to come back to it through 2-3 weeks, in 4 weeks, to make sure it continues rolling. But we haven't started the ball rolling on the general plan, so while the housing element keeps going, now we can step back and look at the pieces of the general plan so that we have a constant stuff to keep us busy. And that's kind of the way we looked at it. And I think the best word was used, it is aspirational. These are the things that are important to us as a community that we want to do. And so just like the Barton Road Bridge replacement, we're not really doing any work on that, but every couple of weeks we call Colton and ask them where they're at and what's going on, and we put it back down again. So these are the kind of things that we want to make sure are important to us as a community. So I don't necessarily want to rate the rest of them in a numerical order.
So you're not saying that West Barton Bridge replacement's more important than updating the hazard mitigation plan? It's just as important. Is that what we're saying?
The rest of them are as important. I think you put it perfectly. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Anything else, Susan?
That is it for me. Thank you.
Well, me personally, I'm glad the storm drain is number one. I know we put in for federal funds on that too, and we've been putting in for state assistance. And because I just filled 47 sandbags for that lady down there in Pico in Michigan. So I don't know how much more longer my body can take filling sandbags so her house doesn't get flooded out. But I mean, we just experienced that with the rain this last week. I mean, it's just and our little drains holding out so our road doesn't collapse. And then we did have issues with Mount Vernon Slope. I think how many times we had to close it? Twice last week?
Last week, we did some cleanup. The Colton end, they closed it at least once that I know of for a couple hours to clear their debris. Our crews were pretty aggressive on that.
Yes, thank you. Yes, they have been. And of course, we had power alleys issues. So and that's what comes with the storm. We just got to try to be proactive on this. And like Councilor Allen said, you know, these priorities went up to the state and federal legislations to help our city to, you know, for better quality of life, and also the storm drain mitigation. That's for water for down there in Riverside. We have to make sure our storm drains because they need that water. So that's another reason why the federal government hopefully will get involved. So, okay, so what are we looking for? A motion and
Just an acceptance of this and direction that we continue on this path.
all right. Do I have anybody want to make that motion?
Mayor, just for the record,
Oh,
there is no
any
no
public
public
comment?
comment.
First time I didn't say that tonight.
We almost ran out of public anyway.
The diehards are left. Okay, we have a motion and a second for this?
I'll move the item.
And I'll second.
Moved by Councilman Allen, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, so what do we got now? Oh, future agenda items, none. City Council communications. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The mayor and I attended the California League of Cities Mayor and Council Academy. It's really well done. It was intense. They're packing more and more information into these sessions without adding a day. So new rules, new regulations, new laws that go into effect, and updated regulations and recommendations regarding familiar topics like harassment and so on and so forth. But the highlight of that trip was the mayor reducing my life expectancy driving back to Grand Terrace from Monterey. If you've ever been on Highway 198, you never want to go there if you can avoid it. But we had a good time. It was good fellowship, and I'm only razzing him about Highway 198 because he also determined we're going to see what the actual range of this Prius is. So by the time we found the gas station, I think there's 1 bar left and 10 miles estimated in terms of the fuel capacity. So a good time was had by all. In addition to the Cal Cities conference, the mayor and I attended the 50th anniversary of the Lions Club at the old Elks Club in San Bernardino. It was a very, very nice evening, extremely well attended. I don't think there was a empty seat on all the tables that were prepared for that event. And so heard a lot of good stories, Lions Club stories, and renewed commitment to continue to work effectively with the city and with the community as a whole. Lastly, just this week, I think, or last week, we had a grand opening, Royal Boba Tea. It's in the old Mail Mart location in the shopping center. A Grand Terrace couple that started the business, enthusiastic. Looks like, according to what they indicated to the mayor and I, they were very pleased, at least with the first few weeks of business. I encourage you all to stop by, show your support, buy a little tea from time to time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. So last week I attended the Colton Joint Unified School District's Community Cabinet meeting, and this is an opportunity where leadership from the various schools in the school district, including our own schools here in Grand Terrace, come together, and the superintendent make presentations, and usually 2 or 3 of the schools are picked to provide a student presentation, and one of the ones I want to tell you about really quick, I was so blown away by these, I was so impressed. Bloomington High Schools, each of the schools have pathways for the students. They start these early on. They start them in elementary school, and that goes all the way through junior high into high school. The pathways, it might be science or business or hospitality or whatever, medical. They have all kinds of specialized educational opportunities and training. And the one that they presented at this particular community cabinet meeting from the high school was from Bloomington High School, and these were the Business and Entrepreneur Pathways program. And so there was a group of 5 high school kids, students, and their teacher, and they started a company, for real. They for real started a company. It's legitimate. You can look it up. I mean, they got a website. They sell stuff. They got a business license and everything, And they had each of the students, one's a CEO, one's the COO, one's a CFO, and they manage and run this business, and people send them orders, and they fill the orders and ship them back out. I mean, it's totally amazing that these high school kids have started this international company to supply wellness products to other schools. I was really amazed, and I just got to say, my hat is off to our educators in the Colton Joint Unified School District. Every time I go to one of these community cabinet meetings, I'm impressed. So if they're listening out there, parents, you have some really, really good teachers who really are interested in your students and your kids and want them to succeed. So work with them, show them support, and that's all I have, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Robles?
I did attend the Transportation Agency meeting, but I'm going to defer my report on that because it gets kind of intense. All the agendas are hitting at the same time, so it's kind of hard to do a good report on that. So I'll be attending the tomorrow, the Transit Committee, and I'll just save that. But I wanted to mention two things, just so people will understand that we didn't violate the Brown Act when it came to my discussion about the bonds, defeasing them. I talked to one member about the defeasement, and then in keeping with the Brown Act, we talked to a third member only for scheduling the topic. And then I was looking at my water bill, and I was going, oh my God, how do you not go into tier 2? I mean, the most rain and whatever. And then I looked at the bottom, and I go, remember the big brouhaha over the franchise fee? We were going to really hurt them and all that stuff. So it's $1.29. So that's it. And congratulations to Lions. I'm sorry I couldn't join you. I really enjoy always being with you guys. But I'm celebrating my 50th wedding anniversary this Sunday, and every dollar was going to that. And I inadvertently sent him for 4 things I did where you can pay 4 payments with your PayPal. I did everything I could not to tap into my savings. But next time I'll bring a picture. Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
Congratulations on your anniversary. Did you say 50?
Mayor Pro Tem?
That's cool.
Thank you, Mayor. I will defer my time to you.
Okay, well, thank you. So just to clarify, Ken Henderson double dared me to go on Highway 196. If you get double dared, I almost went to double dog dare, so then I just did it, but.
198.
Oh, 198. See, I didn't even know where I was at. So, but it was, we had to go on that freeway and not realizing that sign said next service 52 miles, and we had 75 to 90 miles to go, but the road was up and down hills, so I would put it in neutral and we cruised down the hills. But we made it. I wasn't worried one bit. But anyway, on that, thank you, Lions, and it was a great event. They're not here. I went with Ken Henderson because my wife was out of town, so I asked Ken Henderson to be my date that day. So, and he didn't want to dance, but but we did go together. I went to the Science and Engineer Fair. It's been so long that we talked about the council meeting, but I opened my mouth and I said, well, at least it's not going to rain, and it started raining, so they kind of looked at me weird. But as Councilman Allen was saying, I talked to one of the engineer teachers and counselor, and they were really happy that the battery storage place is coming in, and that company is working with not only Grand Terrace High School, but also with Colton High School and all the high schools to integrate different stuff to be done, to work with them in that place. The wall and then the metal shop making different statues and stuff. So the teachers were, they're really happy about it and what that company's doing for as far as internships and everything else. So that was a big plus. But seeing, like Councilman Allen said, all these kids, oh my goodness, man, these guys are geniuses. I mean, we made a volcano, and these guys are making this thing, it'll tell you what color that is or some other thing, and then I'm like, wow, I just impressed by, these kids and our future here and then what they're going to do. And it was really neat seeing. And then I had a thing for the League of Cities, we had a work program report, and we also had priorities. And this is what the League of Cities voted into, and this is what we'll be handling with the state issues and stuff. But number 1 was safeguard local revenues from bolstering local economic development. Their other priority, number 2 priority is strengthen climate change, resilient, and disaster preparedness. Number 3, improve public safety in the California communities. And number 4 priority is expand investment in preventing and reduce homelessness and increase the supply of affordable housing. So that's the League of Cities priorities that they'll be working with the state to try to maintain. And I know we're going up there, and one of the things that the state has been given is $6 billion a year for homelessness. I don't know what the deficit, what that's going to change. I know last year we asked them not to take away or give an increase, but just to keep it the same. And that's all I have for my communications. City Manager?
I don't have anything to add. However, Lieutenant Lane would like to make a comment.
Just a couple of things. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. First of all, let me thank the council for your thoughtful consideration about the tax item. I know moving that forward is one big step towards something that Johan and a large group of other people started years ago, so I'm anxious to see where that leads. And I know my folks really do appreciate the support as well. I had a few of them here tonight, so thank you for that. But I wanted to just kind of give you a brief report on some of the OTS activity that we've done in the city here. The OTS is a grant for Office of Traffic Safety. The city receives money for that annually. Since December, we've had 2 operations. We had our first actual DUI checkpoint here back in December. It was on December 16th, and it was right outside, right here on Barton. During those 8 hours, it looks like, 697 cars went through that checkpoint. 49 were pulled into the pit, which is where they perform FSTs and other investigations for driving offenses. There were 2 arrests for DUI, 14 citations written for no license or driving on a restricted license, and a total of 15 citations issued. So with that was a Saturday night, so that traffic flow through there saw quite a few cars, and I think they did a fantastic job out there. It took 22 staff members from our department to make that happen. So that's a big operation doing those checkpoints, and they did a great job. And then back on February 9th, on a Friday, we did some proactive enforcement for PCF operation, which is primary collision factors. Those are items such as DUI, seatbelt violations, distracted driving, things of that nature. 2 deputies worked out there for about 8 hours and wrote 15 different citations for a variety of things. So we're out there in force on a lot of days, and just kind of sending the message that just everybody needs to pay more attention to their driving habits and drive carefully and within the speed laws, so that we can reduce the number of collisions and injuries here in the city. And the last thing was, at the last meeting in January, there was some discussion during the meeting about J.C. Wallace House and an issue or an incident that took place regarding an assault with a deadly weapon at one of the gas stations here in town. That was a pretty fresh report at the time of the meeting, so not all the details were clear at that point, but I think a lot of the discussion and the comments that we heard from people during the meeting was that everybody was of the belief that that was a J.C. Wallace resident. And I have since come to learn that that was actually not a J.C. Wallace resident that was involved in that altercation. It was a Grand Terrace resident, however. So I just wanted to kind of put that on record. We are keeping close eyes on the activities of J.C. Wallace, and we're in regular communications with them. But I just thought after that discussion, I had to clear up that record a little bit so that there's no confusion about that. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to recess the closed session. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just had one comment, Mr. Mayor, in connection with your comment about the Cal City's priorities, in particular climate change. That's one of the reasons why the master plan of storm drainage is our #1 priority. But just today, I read an article that had pictures of flora and fauna in Antarctica. That used to be all ice. Now you see flowers like it's springtime. And they attribute that obviously to global warming and particularly around the bottom of the earth. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So we're going to recess the closed session. We're going to be in conference with Real Property Negotiations Pursuit of Government Code, Section 54956.8, Property APN S 1167-151-22, 2267-151-74, 1167-151-68, 1167-151-71, 1167-16103, and 1167-16104. The second thing is to be conference with the Labor Negotiation Pursuit of Government Code 5495 7.6, and then we're going to have a conference with legal counsel existing litigations. We had two of those, and that's going to be Government Code 5495 6.9. And just remember, we're going to close for Joe Ramos and his family, and they're in our prayers. I know you guys probably won't stick around for us. I don't know when we're going to be here, probably midnight oil, but thank you for coming out, and thank you for your support and everything you've done for us. So we're closed session. Going to reconvene from closed session. Staff was given direction on what to do on conference with real property negotiations, conference with labor negotiators, and conference with legal counsel, and conference with number 4 legal counsel. Do I need to say anything else on that?
No, I think you covered it. So basically on all items on the agenda, real property negotiations, labor negotiations, and the 2 existing litigation matters for Sunny Days and Islandburg, direction was provided to staff.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and adjourn in honor of James Ramos, and the next regular city council meeting will be held Tuesday, February 27, 2024, 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the city clerk. Good night.